First of all, my name is Larry Krasner. I'm an attorney. I'm sorry about that. I have represented an awful lot of faces I see here or work together with a lot of faces I've seen here. I'd love to acknowledge you all, but that would take too long. So let me just get to what we have to say. First of all, I do want to thank Professor Austin for persuading me of the obvious, which is that talking about Askia Sabor is actually talking about protest, and it's talking about the importance of video. In thinking about it further, I decided to do two things because we don't have a ton of time. I brought some materials which are here. There is an excellent article about Askia Sabor and that case's significance in terms of criminal justice that was written by a guy named Dan Denver for Philadelphia City Paper. I have a lot of copies here. I also have my card because I know that some of you have not had, well, I have not had the pleasure of representing you in protest activity, although I have represented quite a few of you. So in the event that you should do what you're supposed to do, which is angry up the devil, and you should find yourself in trouble, as Mr. Finkel did not so long ago, if you should do that for good or bad reasons, we would love to hear from you. There's my card. Feel free to call.
He's good.
Thank you, Harvey. Now, what is this? This is yesterday's paper. It covers the fascinating and important headline that a police officer pushed over a basketball hoop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may not seem like it's the biggest deal, but it's a really big deal.
Right.
And it's a really big deal because this is the same police officer who 2 days prior was caught on another cell phone doing a stop and frisk of some people in Philadelphia. On October the 15th, Officer Nice, that's N-A-C-E, not N-I-C-E, makes national news for his stop and frisk behavior. And 2 days later, he's pushing over this. It's the cover of the Daily News. Why is it there? Who cares? He's pushing over, you know, a basketball hoop. Well, the answer is because these two uses of the cell phone were windows on the reality of what it means in Philadelphia to interact with Philadelphia police if you were a certain kind of person in a certain kind of neighborhood, okay? The cell phone is arguably, cell phone used as a camera, is arguably the biggest advance in criminal justice, which is what I do, since DNA. It really is. And it's different than DNA because DNA is something that is in the possession of law enforcement and scientists. The cell phone is the most egalitarian, most democratic form of evidence gathering that the average person has ever had to pull away the curtain and show what is really going on. All right? You all know that. But I am reminded every day of this. The last 3 jury trials I have done in the last couple of months, in every single one I had to bring in video equipment because we had video to show. And the impact of the video is absolutely crushing when you have testimony that is untrue about your client. This has a couple of implications. So here's the question. How is a cell phone like a mousetrap? It's kind of the same size, approximately the same shape. Well, let me tell you how it can be like a mousetrap. There is this Gandhian notion, which somebody smarter than me told me a long time ago, which is that what you're doing as an activist, what you're doing with direct action, is you're getting the oppressor to bear its claws. Well, the interesting part of that to me is that you're not bearing its claw, you're bearing its claws. That this great, powerful beast has more than one claw. Well, the obvious use of video and the cell phone, at least in terms of criminal justice, is to capture the oppression itself as it's occurring. And we think of that in an obvious way as being capture the brutality of a reaction to a demonstration, capture the false arrest, capture the diminution or crushing of people's rights. But there is another side, and the other side is the side where I live. And that is to capture what goes on after the case begins. Because, of course, unlike all of you who take all kinds of risks, I take no risks. I don't go to demonstrations. I just deal with things after they happen. Well, what is it that happens in court? Here's the big surprise. Massive lying. That is what happens in court. And it is not new. This is what has been going on forever. I actually started practicing law and being a trial lawyer in criminal justice 25 years ago, and I used to have to listen to district attorneys say, to average people say, because they believed it, that there had never been a mistake made in the conviction of a person, all right? DNA, blah, 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 ha, ha, ha. Okay, not that they should have actually needed DNA to know that, but some of them did. Well, there are other people who actually think the police always tell the truth. Turns out that they're like us. Sometimes they lie. So it is the interplay between the lawyer and the activist that can turn the cell phone into the mousetrap. So you can snap people who think it's okay to put their hand on the Bible and then lie in court. This is going to be weird and disjointed, but it will make sense later. We are now going to play 2 videos, and I'm just going to talk over them. Feel free to enjoy them. The first one is a video of Askia Sabor being mistreated by Philadelphia police. The very short version of that long story is that Askia Sabor was on a corner talking to a cousin. He was told in an improper way that he had to get out of there for no good reason. He was then beaten fairly unmercifully while someone took this video. If you could turn the sound down, that'd be good. We'll try to get the volume under control here. But this is a video that went viral. It was a nationally famous case. It's a case in which we did the criminal defense, and we also later did a civil suit for Mr. Sabor. We're going to keep the sound down just so we can get through it. But basically what happens here is, in a sense, a spontaneous protest, and that is what Professor Austin convinced me of. It is actually a spontaneous protest, not to simply acquiesce and run away scared when you're told improperly that you should be off the corner just because someone says so. Mr. Sabor, like a good protester at a certain point here, holds his hands out to show there's nothing in them, that he is not fighting back, and he says repeatedly, I am doing nothing wrong, I'm doing nothing wrong, all right? So how is this like a mousetrap? This was not planned, there was no interplay between lawyers and activists. Well, it wasn't yet. But there's a second video, and the second video was taken by the same videographer. And the second video is a video of the police officer who is out of control, the one with the baton here. It's the video of that officer running around destroying video. It's a video of his running around grabbing cell phones, smashing them, trying to arrest people who had them, etc. And that is how Askia Sabor became like a mousetrap. Because what happened here is that the police officers knew about the first video, but they didn't know about the second for reasons that were purely accidental. It was just a question of how they were posted to YouTube and how the second one was under a generic name and the first one was under a very specific and obvious name. So when we went to try this case, 18 months after it happened, after Mr. Sabor had been away from his 3 children and his wife for 18 months in custody, when we went to try the case, and the police officer sitting up there not realizing we had the goods denied that he had ever tried to wreck anybody's cell phone, all we had to do was play the video. And then his crazy stories about how everything Mr. Sabor did bad he did before the video, or everything he did bad is not captured by the video, then those crazy stories were that much crazier. Because when you say under oath, I never want to destroy that video, and it is established obviously to a jury to be untrue, there's nothing worth believing. You are a cover-up artist. The mousetrap has snapped. So what is the weird lesson coming from Askia Sabor's case? This is a fun one. A little bit later, what you're going to see is that the videographer who is holding up his camera is pursued by the most brutal officer, who then tries to reach for the phone. Fortunately, the videographer is taller, so he holds the phone up high, and we have images of the brutal officer basically jumping up to try to get it. And then we have images of the videographer backing further away. We see the same brutal officer go after another person, a woman wearing a red hat and red shorts who has been taking pictures. He succeeds in getting her camera. He arrests her falsely. She also had a case. And you will eventually see, as the videographer is backed farther and farther and farther away by this crew of officers who are approaching like a zombie invasion, you will see that various local citizens start to form a barrier in between the videographer and the police, understanding the significance of his preserving that video itself. So, well, I mean, the bad thing for Mr. Sabor is that this was a spontaneous protest. It wasn't planned. He wasn't interacting with attorneys. He didn't anticipate it. One of the really bad things for Mr. Sabor is the videographer was so excited that he uploaded this video to YouTube immediately. That meant that before these officers ever testified at a preliminary hearing, they got an opportunity to look at their police paperwork, change it, modify it, readjust their stories so that everything bad Mr. Sabor theoretically did happened before the video, right? It's just that they missed the second piece. So what's the lesson for all of you? The lesson for all of you is that generally, as activists and people who engage in direct action, you do know that there's going to be some kind of an engagement with police, or at least you know there might be. And you then, I would hope, would look to lawyers who are in fact technicians only. We shouldn't be directing anything, but you would look to lawyers to say, can we chat? Now, what form does this chat take? Well, obviously you cannot tell a lawyer to give you advice on how to break the law, because arguably some direct action is breaking the law. What you can do, though, is you can sit down with a lawyer, as I have done with ACT UP for 20 years, as I've done with Harvey's crew for quite a few years. You can sit down with them and say, look, here's 3 or 4 hypotheticals about what we might do. Can you explain to us what the legal consequences might be if it's federal ground, if it's state ground? Can you explain to me, would we be looking at felonies or misdemeanors or summaries, in what county we are and what the likely consequences are going to be, how long is the process going to take? Those conversations, because they are hypothetical, and because for every real one, which may be your plan, there's another one that is not your plan. Those conversations are proper, ethical, and appropriate with attorneys. They give you information that you need, and hopefully, and this is where we come back to the mousetrap, hopefully, they put everyone in a position where you understand that it's you who can control the timing of law enforcement's access to your video. Because it is such a blessing for someone who is charged with an offense when you have police who are testifying without any knowledge that their actions have been captured on video. You get them under oath at the preliminary hearing or maybe in front of a grand jury. They say whatever they want to say. And then they are caught. And the trap snaps, and it snaps even before trial. And sometimes then the case can go away immediately, and often you're in a much, much better position before trial. And that's what helps pull back the curtain and show the truth. All right, a couple of other quick comments. Number one, Mr. Finkel was my wedding photographer 24 and a half years ago, and that was not, at least on my part, a protest. That's why we're still married. It is. Black and white shots, got that gritty urban feel. It's in my bedroom right now next to the dresser. Anyway, number two, very important to point out that they're going to go for your cameras. They're going to go for your video. They're going to do it just like they did here with this videographer. They're going to do it just like they did with when the NYPD targeted street journalists during the Occupy Wall Street movement. And that's illegal. Even in Philadelphia, there are specific directives from our police commissioner that the police are not to mess with that. That's obstruction of justice. Destruction of evidence is obstruction of justice. It is a crime. It should be prosecuted by district attorneys. It won't be, but it is in fact a crime. And therefore, some of the more decent police departments are catching up with the trend in the law. The trend in the law is very clear that public activity by police can be recorded. Doesn't matter what they say or what they think, it can be recorded. So when you're using video, use it well and use it cleverly, but you need to expect that when they do wrong, they're going to try to wreck your video, and they're going to try to wreck you for having taken it. So be very careful with that. And that is all I have. Thank you very much.